Hey, Brett, before we get rolling here, just everybody. So obviously it's a short week. It's a playoff week. Well, I say short. I mean, there's only 4 games this week. It's wild card weekend. Brad and I will get to the games. I've been on Bovada Sportsbook, obviously. I have all the odds. I have all the daily fantasy stuff if you want to play daily fantasy. We'll get to that in a bit. But, high level, Brad, let's just throw this out to you, just a little discussion point. Are you surprised at anything of how the NFL season ended at all? Does anything jump out to you? Either the last week of the season or just in general from the whole season. Did anything jump out to you?
Any surprises?
Yeah.
I am surprised that New England coughed that one up at home
Yes.
to Miami.
It's their
Miami,
annual bad December loss to Miami. It's so weird.
I know, right? Didn't last year they lost on one of those Hail Mary lateral deals, right?
They did.
They did,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And what's more painful, losing that way or just having Fitzpatrick just drive down your throat at the end of the game?
Yeah.
That was very surprising.
What is that? The first time am I right about this? First time in 10 years they don't have a bye week in the playoffs?
Correct.
So
Correct.
and this to me, and we'll talk about that because we have a game coming up. But what you and I have been talking about, Brad, is Belichick, and one of my rules, and it's still a rule of mine: don't bet against Belichick. Now it doesn't mean I have to bet on the Patriots, but don't bet against them.
Right.
And
right.
I crossed my own rule up in the playoffs last year, where I was just like, this is the year the Chargers can do it, and then the Patriots ran all over them, and game was over like 5 minutes into the game, but. The interesting thing is they don't have the bye week. So what do we know about Belichick? If he has 2 weeks to game plan, he's like 85% covers the spread. We're not even talking about wins, loss. We're talking about covering the spread. He doesn't have that second week this time around for the first time in a decade. Now he's still the better coach here. Don't get me wrong, but that's an interesting storyline. And then you have the other crazy Belichick stat is the second time he plays a quarterback, his cover and his win percentage is ridiculous as well. They're playing the only team in the playoffs for the AFC that they have not played yet this year.
Oh, things are all of a sudden not lining up for them.
They're not. Yeah, it's. And now I'm not saying they're going to lose, and we'll talk about it because I have the numbers and I have my initial picks, but I have some stats to go with these and all that stuff. I haven't made my official pick yet, but I don't love them as much this week as I would have had they been playing like a Pittsburgh.
Yes, I agree. I don't love them as much either. However, they're so much smarter and more well prepared.
Yes.
That
And
I would
experienced.
almost still experienced,
Yeah.
right? So I would almost still take them. It's still the same thing. Like you'd kind of be a fool.
Yeah.
Are you going to take New England or the field? Well, you'd kind of be a fool to take the field, wouldn't
I'm
you?
taking the field this year, Brad. I am.
You are. Okay. Well,
The
maybe
field.
fool is a strong word.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe
Now, I
fool.
wouldn't have done that. This is the first year, and we'll talk about this when we get into the game. But this is like there's some holes in New England. We'll talk about them, but their defense is still world class. Their defense is fantastic. Maybe a top 10 defense in terms of one season output that we've ever seen. So that's very good. And their special teams are on point. So and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. One thing, that
Let
Miami.
me just let me say this. Their defense is good. All right. I don't know exactly which quarterbacks they faced all year, but I can guarantee you it ain't great.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
It's just I bet the majority. I know they faced. Did they face Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes?
They did, and they lost.
And they lost. And did they face Lamar Jackson?
They did, and they lost.
And they lost. All right, so that's 2 out of 14. I bet out of those other 14s, you see a lot of
They faced Deshaun Watson and lost.
Okay. All right, so then the other 13
Yeah,
I would
right.
bet are a lot of guys with the last name Allen. I bet you see, because there's like 6 of them and they're all rookies. They're all like Jerry, Terry, and Kerry Allen. They're all the same guy. I can't tell any of them apart.
One has a mustache. One
They
wears
play
a hat.
exactly the same way. My point is yes, the defense has been really good, but you can get fat and happy off subpar quarterbacks.
Sure.
Okay.
Let me think about I guess surprises. One that we were not surprised about, but we'll harp on because there's some news that comes out today. Cleveland, you and I were on the under on them all season long.
We hit that one. We hit that nail on the head.
And I would say for the most part, Brad, we were pretty. I'll revisit that and I'll go to stats. By the way, I did for our regular listeners, Brad. You finished at about 50 to 51%, which is below the pay line, but above. And this is all games against the spread, not your favorites, but all games. So that's actually pretty good. Games against the spread over 50%. I was at 55.5, 56 all games against the spread. Here's a real son of a bitch for you, Brad. There's a major contest I won't mention by name, but there's a major contest. Had I entered, Brad, my computer picks, which I use on this show to make some of the stuff, had I entered the computer picks would have finished third in the country, which would have won me $350,000 this year. So in 2020, I will be entering some contests with just Rockobot. Old Rockobot. Nice. Yeah.
Old Rockobot.
But so I mean, the computer picks did very well, but they always do well. Shame on me for not, putting my money where my mouth has been for the last 6 years, but that won't be the case starting next year. I snuck in. I got some good wins and some parlays, so I won some good money in week 17. The thing that, like, to me, one of the most obvious bets of the year was RG3 starting for Baltimore against Pittsburgh, and Baltimore was getting 2 points. That was, to me, that was a slam dunk of the century. So I put them in a ton of parlays. Tennessee playing Houston's backup players. Tennessee needing the win in your in situation. Ryan Tannehill's been playing lights out since he's been taken over there. That was a slam dunk. So I had Baltimore and Tennessee in like all my parlays. If I had hit, and I made a mistake, but had I hit Indianapolis over Jacksonville, which I added them because I thought they were still mathematically in the playoff chase, but they weren't. So that was my mistake. That was an oversight on my part. But if I had hit that, I would have hit 16 parlays like all over the place. But so it goes. But anyway, back to what I was originally saying, Brad. Sorry. So back to Cleveland. Freddie Kitchens is fired. That's something we called the second, third week of the season, was it, Brad? Yep. And Cleveland fans were fighting us on it as you get your emotion into it. I get it. We're not going to harp on that, but it was pretty obvious, Brad, to me and you that Freddie Kitchens was not for the job early in the year. And then today it just was announced that now Glenn Dorsey, their crap GM, I think he was actually the big problem there. He will not be back now. So Cleveland, clean slate. I don't know what coach or what GM would want to go there. That's the challenge to me. Who would want to go there?
Well, talent-wise, I think you want to go there. True.
Very true. Very true. They're talented.
It's not that they don't have talent. Also, you have to, if you're going to go there, you have to go there believing in Baker. Like, you have to find a guy that says, I like Baker, and I'm willing to work with him and be his guy. I think that's the criteria. I don't think it's structurally, they keep firing these coaches after a year or two,
That's the problem, right?
That's the problem. So from your point, why would you want to go into that environment? Well, here's the thing. I think that if they bring in someone like Mike McCarthy, I think you don't fire him after 1 year.
But here's my thing with McCarthy, and I agree with what you're saying, Brad. Here's my thing with McCarthy, though, is he's a Super Bowl winning coach who basically kind of revitalized Brett Favre's career. Say what you want about the relationship he had with Aaron Rodgers. He turned Brett Favre's career back around in Green Bay, okay? Yep. Because Brett Favre was a more likable Jameis Winston when he was playing under Sherman and all that. He was throwing a lot of touchdowns and a lot of interceptions. I remember he had like a 24-25 interception season one year, and we had Jameis hit 30 interceptions, by the way, Brad. He went 30 for 30. Wow. 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. It's crazy. But anyway, for McCarthy, I feel like I would rather sit out one more season than take that Cleveland job if I was McCarthy. Look, I love Cleveland. I love the fans, the support of the organization. That owner is goofy. Haslam is a dumpster. He is volatile. I don't want anything to do with him. To me, the only kind of guys that are going to take that Cleveland job, and we've talked about on this show before, are either coaches that have been assistant coaches forever and have never gotten a chance, so they're desperate, and they're like, all of a sudden they look up and they're 57 and they've never gotten a head coaching job, so they need to take something or they might never get it. Or an older, successful head coach that nobody's going to give a shot on because they're old. To me, the slam dunk is still Mike Shanahan here. That is the perfect fit because he can deal with it. He can stand up to the owner. Now that the GM's gone, he can have some control of the personnel. That offensive line's not going to be an issue for him because of the how he coaches offensive lines. They'll be able to get it back in shape. He's going to run everything through Nick Chubb and maybe Kareem Hunt if he's still there. And he's going to have Baker Mayfield now rolling out and hitting wide open Odell Beckham and wide open Jarvis Landry because of the scheme. It is a slam dunk. Is it going to happen? No. But I'm telling you, if they make that hire, I would actually I honestly would do this. I would pick Cleveland to make a wild card position next year in the playoffs if they made that hire.
I would also if they took McCarthy, I would also I think he's a good fit basically for the town of Cleveland in
Yeah,
general.
I do think he'd be a great fit everywhere except for the owner is just a nutball, man. He's a nut job. And I don't know, man. If you have options, and McCarthy will have options, I don't know. Another guy, I don't think this is a good hire, but another guy I think would fit the profile of that kind of head coach or that kind of team, just taking a job for Haslam and his ownership group, is like a Brian Billick or a Jim Fossil, guys that have been desperate to get a second chance at head coaching. But
is he looking to coach again, Brian Billick?
He's been trying to get back, and nobody will even give him an interview. But it's getting to the point. Do you remember when Lane Kiffin got fired from Oakland, and then nobody would take an interview with Oakland? And they ended up hiring maybe Tom Cable or something like that. Cleveland's getting dangerously close to that level. And I'm actually shocked, by the way, that the Redskins were able to basically, I don't think as of the time of this recording it's official. It might be, but it wasn't as of the last time I checked my newswire. Ron Rivera is going to be the next head coach of the Washington Redskins.
That's right.
And I'm shocked that even Ron Rivera would, because he's going to have options too. I'm shocked that he would go there, but he's going to make a ton of money. So. But if I was Ron Rivera, I wouldn't take that job because he came with a lot of criticism.
Snyder?
For Snyder, I wouldn't do it. And yeah, they got rid of Bruce Allen, which is a big deal in Washington. They had to do that, and I think that was the right thing to do. But Ron Rivera, for coming under as much criticism as he had come under in Carolina, I feel like if he tanks in Washington, and I think it's likely that he will. I think that's a career killer for him. I just, I don't think so. But to be fair, the articles I've been reading for the Redskins is that Ron Rivera is going to be a lot more involved in the personnel decisions. Maybe not be the GM, but a lot more involved. And they're bringing Jack Del Rio in to be the defensive coordinator, apparently, and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's reason for optimism. The defensive unit was probably the better. They got to replace that quarterback, though. Haskins isn't ready to be a quarterback. Maybe Alex Smith somehow has a miracle return. He's trying to get back next season. We'll see. But
that'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice for him. I mean, he's a good guy. Like, you don't want to see a guy's career end and that kind of thing.
Right.
Then he
was out all year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was out since halfway last season.
Yeah,
after that leg break. And then, the Redskins gave him a bunch of infections after their surgeries. That's what the Redskins do. They lose football games, and then they end careers with staph infections. That's the organization's MO. It's very weird. Very weird.